Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our AskAVC show. I will give you a few minutes to sign on. And let's welcome Scott Dorsey from High Alpha Venture Studio in Indianapolis. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Hi, everybody, and wonderful, Rebecca. Thanks for having me on the program today.
Oh, we're really thrilled about it. You are our first Heartland VC to be on our show. And we have a series coming up. It's going to be at least 4 or 5 more shows with VCs from the Heartland.
Outstanding. Well, thank you. I'm honored to be the first one. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. All right, everyone. Now this show is 1 hour. We're going to start with just some chat, and then we'll go to the Q&A with all of you. And you can ask questions through the chat box. I will be picking the best ones. So please make sure it's very relevant to the topics that we're discussing. And let's not waste Scott's time because his time is really valuable. All right. So if you are joining us for the first time, a little bit about Silicon Dragon Ventures. I started it in 2010 after my first book, Silicon Dragon, was published in 2008. That was about China as the new frontier. I've now spotted the Heartland as a new frontier here in the US, and I'm originally from the Midwest, so I get it. I get it big time. It was a little harder in China when I was traveling around China and interviewing people and taking taxis and trying to maneuver around foreign places. But I got a lot of good stories out of it, and I got a lot of good stories out of the Heartland too. It was about 6 months on the road doing interviews with entrepreneurs and investors throughout the Rust Belt. I guess we really can't call it the Rust Belt anymore, right, Scott?
Right. I like Silicon Heartland. I think that's a good label.
Okay, Silicon Heartland, right. Okay, so this is our AskAVC Anything series, which I started when COVID hit. I used to do a lot of live events, and we did them in China and all over Asia and Israel and London and New York and San Francisco. Actually, the first time I met Scott was in Shanghai.
Oh. How about that? I know that goes back a long time, Rebecca, but pretty remarkable that we first got acquainted. And I was actually on a trip with the governor of Indiana, and it was a mission trip to help the state of Indiana connect more effectively with businesses in China and then later Japan. And I was so intrigued by the tech scene in Shanghai and Beijing in particular, and getting a chance to meet you and see one of your programs and run over and meet Alibaba back in the early days. It was very inspiring. So it's fun to see our worlds kind of connect this many years later.
Absolutely. China to the Heartland. There is a bridge.
That's right.
All right, so please check out our mobile app, our newsletter, our Silicon Dragon Circle membership, and of course my books and the videos. We're going to be recording this show today. It will be available later on, but today live is the only time that you'll be able to ask Scott a question and get an answer. So without further ado, let's move on. Scott Dorsey. A little bit about Scott. He founded High Alpha Venture Studio in 2015. It's in Indianapolis in the Bottle Works district. And that's where the old Coca-Cola bottling plant was.
That's right.
And that's where your new headquarters is. It's very nice. I saw it.
Yeah, thank you.
3 funds totaling 216 million. Not bad in a short period of time. Building basically from scratch almost in Indianapolis.
Absolutely.
Okay. 76 plus investments. How many is it now, Scott?
Yeah, probably up into the mid 80s by now.
Mid 80s. All right, we'll update that. Notable deals. Lessonly, I visited Lessonly when I was in Indianapolis doing research for my book, Silicon Heartland, and I interviewed the founder who sold his business. And there's several other deals that Scott has done that are remarkable in terms of the amount they've raised and also through the co-investment that they've attracted from coastal VCs, such as Tiger Global and SoftBank and GGV and Menlo and Bessemer. So those are deals that are about to hatch, right, Scott?
Absolutely. That's a great list of companies right there.
Okay. So Scott has his MBA from Northwestern. He also had dabbled in the internet for a while and got a lot of lessons, I'm sure, from that. We'll hear more about that in a minute, I think. But let me stop the share and please start getting your questions ready so that we can have a real lively Q&A for this show. All right. So Scott is broadcasting from Indianapolis and I'm in Manhattan today, where the UN just opened its session. So if you hear a lot of honking out there, this is the heart of Manhattan. And I'm only about 10 blocks from the UN.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Never a dull moment here in New York. So tell us, Scott, what, one thing I left out of your bio, which is very important, is that you sold your startup Exact Target to Salesforce for $2.5 billion,
Yeah.
which was a record. Is it still the record in Indiana?
I believe so.
Yeah, and that was back in 2013.
Correct.
Well, tell us about that. I mean, how did that lead you into a totally new direction? How did it change your life?
Yeah, sure, Rebecca. So maybe I'll just kind of back up and provide a little background. So I did attend graduate school at Northwestern at Kellogg and earned my MBA from like 97 to 2000. And I really went back to graduate school thinking I was headed toward a management consulting career. That was kind of my motivation. And once I got into the program, the internet really started coming of age. I just became so intrigued and enthralled with entrepreneurship and all the unique business models that the internet was going to be able to create. And that led to me joining an internet company in Chicago for a year, and then ultimately moving to Indianapolis to start Exact Target. So I moved to Indy in January of 2001. Challenging time, to start a new tech company. In many ways, there are a lot of parallels to what we've gone through with the pandemic for the last 2 years and now the economic downturn, but also, the necessity of being frugal and creative and scrappy often kind of brings out the best in entrepreneurs as well. So I'm grateful actually for the timing in which we started the company, but 3 of us started Exact Target. A wonderful visionary named Chris Baggett, who's actually my brother-in-law. He had the original idea around Exact Target. And then Peter McCormick, super talented colleague I'd worked with before. And the 3 of us jumped in, with a vision to build software to help marketers leverage the internet. And it was just an incredible experience, Rebecca, start to finish. Lots of challenges and things that broke and went wrong, certainly, but a lot of things went right. And we grew very, very quickly. We tapped into the very best that cities like Indianapolis and the Midwest has to offer. So we built really close relationships with all the extraordinary universities throughout the state. The city and the state of Indiana were so supportive as we were creating high-tech, high-paying jobs in a market that hadn't really seen that innovation or hadn't seen the tech boom previously. We were a downtown company, so we really leveraged the kind of urban density and the kind of the grit you find in a downtown market to give us a little more edge and allow us to kind of really show off everything Indianapolis had to offer to customers and partners and employees. And it was just an incredible experience. So yeah, we grew to about 2,000 employees. We went public on the New York Stock Exchange in March of 2012. We had about 1,500 employees in Indy, and then the other 500 were in offices all around the world. And then we were just kind of chugging along. We were a public company doing really, really well, 5 quarters. Where we kind of met, and exceeded Wall Street expectations. And then Salesforce kind of came knocking on our door, seeing a much bigger vision together to really have us be the core of the future Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And we had been partners with Salesforce for many years. In fact, we actually integrated our products together prior to the App Exchange even existing. And we just always admired Salesforce. In many ways, we wanted to be the marketing version of Salesforce. We had kind of a big brother, little brother relationship, and we tore as many pages out of their playbook as we could. And we ended up building a really special company. But in the end, the two fit together in a wonderful way. Our products already fit together. Our teams knew one another. And Salesforce has been so strong in the Sales Cloud and the Service Cloud it was just really natural for them to be the leaders and the innovators in the marketing cloud space. So we ended up selling to Salesforce in July of 13. And then I stayed on board for a year, which was incredible. I got to work directly for Mark Benioff and be a part of the Salesforce executive team. I call that like my PhD in SaaS. It was an incredible learning experience. And I wanted to make sure the integration went remarkably well for Salesforce and our employees and also the community. And fortunately, Salesforce has been an incredible steward of our community, just through their foundation and through adding more jobs. They've become really the anchor tenant in our city from a tech perspective. And then in fall of 14, I left to start thinking about High Alpha and what was next, and creating a venture studio and a venture fund was kind of the natural evolution for me. But the Salesforce transaction and then subsequently what's happened since 2013 has really been extraordinary, and just spawning more investment, more angel investors, entrepreneurs that want to go back to the early days and build their own company, and having kind of the confidence and the support system that sales provides across the entire community has really got the flywheel spinning faster than it ever has in the past.
Right. I note that you call it a venture studio.
Yes, yes.
Why is that?
We were actually one of the first, Rebecca, in the world to build a venture studio. Now there are many, many studios all around the world, which has been incredible to see the growth over the last 7 years. But we define a studio as one part startup studio and then one part venture fund. So we actually have two entities, and actually even a third I'll touch on, all under the High Alpha umbrella. High Alpha Studio starts new cloud-based companies. And to date, we've started about 35 over the last 7 years. And we look for big ideas and themes we believe are kind of power trends of the future. And then we work with talented founders who want to build companies in those areas. So the studio is from spark of an idea to company formation. Our team of 50 embeds in with the founding team to help them with everything from product design and go-to-market strategy and recruiting, HR, and finance. And that's really fun because many of our founders are former ExactTarget and Salesforce colleagues who they themselves wanted to go down to the earliest stage and start a company from scratch. Through the pandemic, though, we've started companies with entrepreneurs in all geographies. So early on, it was, I'd say, all Indianapolis and mostly leveraging our network. Today, we built a national and global reputation where we'll start companies anywhere we found a remarkable founding team. And now often that's in markets outside of Indianapolis. And then the second component is High Alpha Capital. That's our venture arm, and we'll invest in our own studio companies as well as external investments, new opportunities of great entrepreneurs we meet around the country. And then third is a group called High Alpha Innovation, which we spun out. And that's a group that drives corporate innovation projects with big corporates and universities so they can start companies and build a studio and start creating that entrepreneurial culture and leverage all the intellectual property and all the talent they have, but shift it in a way where the university or the big co starts looking at new venture creation, and we're a great partner in helping them do that.
That's a really good mix. Yeah. And particularly this corporate edge as well. Corporate venture capital has been taking off, and it's become a lot more innovative.
Absolutely.
A lot more respected in the past. So it sounds like the COVID situation didn't slow down anything at High Alpha.
It was really interesting, Rebecca. We started more companies in 2020 than any other year. We started 10 new companies. In 2020, it was just with all the challenges we were all facing in the world, it really did fundamentally change work and changed how work is done and conducted. And with all that change and all that disruption creates new opportunity. So we seized the opportunity and found lots of really unique technology companies to build during that time. Everything from a company called Mandolin, which is a live music streaming platform to connect artists with their fans, to companies like Philo and Docket that are more kind of worker productivity and remote work oriented.
Mm-hmm. Well, how you mentioned that you had so many cloud-based companies. Why? How can you have so many of what? How can you have so many varieties of them? It seems like SaaS is endless.
But there's always room for innovation.
Software as a service, right?
It's incredible. There's always room for innovation and always new problems to solve. And then always, I say, just big trends in the world to be thinking about. Today, we're spending a lot of time on climate tech. We're spending a lot of time on Web3, and we're applying cloud-based technology in the SaaS business model to brand new areas. And also I'd say we liberally define SaaS and enterprise cloud today as really any technology that a business could be utilizing to operate more productively, more efficiently and more effectively. And that gives us a really big surface area to explore, which is quite fun. I feel like I'm always learning. We're always jumping from one company to the next or one theme to the next, where we're still learning and growing and exploring areas of interest.
Has work changed that much that you can still have a lot of new kind of software startups targeting new areas of work?
It really has, Rebecca. I mean, it's just stunning. And I would say not only is there opportunity for disruption and new thinking and new technology products that take a lot of the B2C experiences we're used to and start working them into the workforce, into the tech stack that we all use as professionals, but just how companies are built is so different. And that's what's really fun. I think our mission at High Alpha is to help entrepreneurs go faster and further than they could on their own. And all of us have an operating background. So we really come at company creation and investing really more as a startup entrepreneur and more as an operator than I think we do an investor. But the way companies are being built today is so fundamentally different. During our journey to ExactTarget, I thought so much about place, like sense of place was really important. And I was hopeful that if we built a remarkable company, that we do something great for our hometown, that we'd be able to pay back the city of Indianapolis and set an example for future entrepreneurs. So location was really important. And we're really proud to show off our city, everything from our user conference called Connections to partners and customers that would visit us from all around the world. Well, today, it's really shifted. All of our companies are being built in a distributed fashion where entrepreneurs are looking for the best talent, regardless of geography. The world is truly flat today. Yeah. And with it comes all kinds of unique challenges. How do you build culture with a remote, hybrid, distributed workforce? How do you drive engagement? How do you measure productivity? As a little startup, how do you operate in multiple states or maybe even multiple countries, right out of the gate? So it's really interesting. Our studio model, we have an embedded HR and recruiting team and embedded finance team. So a 3-person founding team has all these functional support areas to help them go faster and really focus on building product and early customer development. Well, what's interesting is our HR team has to become very adept at how to help our startups hire in different states and make sure they're following all the regulations around hiring and job postings and benefits. And every state is a little bit different. Some are a little tougher than others. So hiring in New York is really different than hiring in Indiana. We have one early stage company that just this week has extended offers to employees in Hawaii and Canada, which, not a big deal once you're a larger company at scale, but if you only have 15 or 20 people, kind of the HR and kind of regulatory considerations are quite different. So those are all the fun challenges that we work through and try to help support our entrepreneurs the best we can.
Well, I think High Alpha has had a huge impact on Indianapolis startup scene. Yeah. In the past less than a decade. All these startups you funded and you're incubating and helping corporations get into it as well. What do you think Indianapolis still needs?
It's a great question, Rebecca. I think more of everything, more founders, more successes, and also more capital. And the way to attract capital is build remarkable companies. And I really believe if we build phenomenal companies with really talented founding teams, the capital will find the companies. But to make it a little bit easier, we really need more capital also in the state of Indiana. And we've got some really nice initiatives underway. There's a group called Elevate Ventures that is a state-affiliated organization that makes direct investments into early-stage tech companies. And then our Governor Holcomb, put together an initiative called Next Level Indiana and the Next Level Fund, which set aside $250 million from the state budget and kind of savings, if you will, that they otherwise would invest in other vehicles, and they dedicated it to venture, and they're putting it in the hands of venture managers to help the venture firms that are here in Indiana have bigger funds, and then also attract funds that don't have a presence in Indiana here. And through that, these managers are then making really smart investments, and they have an extra eye on companies that are coming out of Indiana. So all those little components, I think, help.
Right. So you just need that one big breakthrough company for the more coastal venture capitalists to pay attention.
I think so. Exact Target was a great breakout, and we went public in 2012.
Yeah.
We're working hard to create the next Exact Target, and hopefully one that's even bigger, and more successful. Interesting, looking back at our funding evolution at Exact Target, we had lots of local angel investors, but then all of our venture capital came from the coast.
Oh,
So our
really?
Series A was Inside Ventures out of New York, and then our later round was Battery out of Boston, and TCV out of Silicon Valley, and Scale out of Silicon Valley. And the plus was that those firms traveled to India and they kind of fell in love with our community, and they started looking around for other investments they could make. So it's kind of neat to see how that also spins the flywheel.
Yeah, it's a very friendly environment.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Absolutely.
when I was there doing research for my book, Silicon Heartland, I felt kind of at home, and that
Yeah.
everyone I met also was connected to you or connected to software somehow. It was an amazing cluster. Indianapolis has become this software service cluster. It's really remarkable.
It's neat to see, Rebecca, and I'm so proud of the team we built at Exact Target and our culture. And even more so, just the greatness that everyone has kind of gone on to, like the number of CEOs
Yeah.
who are now running really important companies within the tech industry nationally and globally that
Right.
came from Exact Target is astonishing. I haven't really done a count, but I think we're probably up to 20, 30 CEOs who, had an early career experience at Exact Target and are now running really important software and tech companies, and then
Right.
many across the C-suite. So it's just been fun to see that Exact Target in many ways was the launching pad for so many phenomenal tech leaders and tech careers, whether they've stayed in Indianapolis and many have continued to have incredible careers at Salesforce, or they've gone on to other tech companies or startups.
Right.
Just the kind of the overall web and network
Right.
of what we built, lives on. So
Sure.
it's a huge blessing, honestly. Here we are, we're, at 9 years post-acquisition, and not a week that goes by where I don't run into a Exact Target colleague or somebody reaching out to me to thank me for the experience that we had together and give me an update on what they're doing now in their life and their career. And that's the most rewarding aspect of all.
Sure. Well, I noticed that several of your portfolio companies have coastal VC money in them, and that's great. How were you able to attract this coastal VC money into these Indianapolis-based startups?
Yeah, I think it's leveraging our network, which is an important, part of our equation, and then just building great companies. One that comes to mind, Rebecca, that's kind of funny, linking back to one of your earlier questions, like how many SaaS companies can the world support?
Yeah.
We also started a company called Xylo that is SaaS for SaaS, and Xylo is a platform to help organizations organize the chaos of all the SaaS apps they purchase. So it's kind of a meta or inverse play to the companies that we're producing. But Xylo is a really important company, and I think a great example. They're a platform that helps organizations gain visibility into all the SaaS apps that are running throughout their enterprise, whether IT made an enterprise purchase or an employee bought Evernote or Slack on a credit card. So it brings all the spend together, categorizes it, and then also maps it to utilization, so that the CIO and also the CFO have visibility into what's working, what's being utilized, maybe what's underutilized, where do we have overlap or redundancy. So it's an optimization platform that also helps organizations save money and make sure they're running really efficiently. Founded by 3 former Exact Target colleagues, Eric Christopher, Corey Wheeler, and Ben Pippinger. And the company started out very quickly. It's an enormous market. And our Series A was led by Byron Dieter from Bessemer, phenomenal investor. And our Series B was led by Matt Murphy at Menlo. So that's a great example of Indianapolis-based company, all Silicon Valley funded. And we just had the right team and early traction and going after a big market, and delighted to have those investors on board. Well, the other thing I'll note too that's kind of fun is our studio is funded by 2 venture firms. Emergence Capital out of the Bay Area, phenomenal investors and a great team. They've been with us through Studio 1, 2, and 3. And then Foundry out of Boulder, Brad Feld and his team, the best in the world at building tech ecosystems. So we feel like we've got the best of all worlds with Emergence, who's a phenomenal cloud investor, and then Foundry, who's incredible at thinking about tech ecosystems. And the fact that they've invested in a venture studio, a startup studio in Indiana, I think is really profound. So we're really quite proud to have those investors on board.
Well, how do you think Indianapolis compares to other cities in the Midwest that are also angling to become the next Silicon Valley?
I think there's great innovation across the Midwest. I really do. And I was born in Cleveland. I grew up in Chicago, and spent the last 20 years in Indianapolis. So I'm kind of partial to all markets, I think, in the Midwest. We've made a number of great investments in Chicago. There's a great growing tech community in the Chicago area. Ann Arbor had a big win with Duo Security. So there's a lot of good activity happening there around the University of Michigan. And then Columbus, Ohio, is doing really, really well with Drive Capital and a number of big successes that they've had in that market. So love Minneapolis. We have a couple companies in Minneapolis as well. So I always think of venture investing as it's a team sport. And in the Midwest, we really have to work well together to create scale, and create, the capital structures we need to really fuel these organizations. Because in many ways, I think markets like Indianapolis, we have quite a bit of startup and seed capital. We really don't have scale capital. The scale of capital, when something's working and it's appropriate to raise 20, 30, $40 million in capital, we really have no local funding sources. So that's when we have to reach to the coast or group together with other Midwestern cities to put together these investing syndicates.
Right. Well, I noticed with your startup that you funded and also helped to start, Lessonly was pretty successful in attracting startup capital from Indiana and also from other states and the coast. From New York, I think they had some from New York and Silicon Valley, and actually got acquired by a company. I can't remember the location, the acquiring company.
Seismic acquired
Seismic.
And Lessonly is an incredible story, started by super talented entrepreneur. You've met Max Yoder, and an early founder, Connor Burt. And that was one of our very first studio companies. And they grew to over 300 employees, really became the leader in kind of bite-sized learning software for sales teams and service teams. And what I was probably most proud of, built an extraordinary culture. Culture was very important to us at ExactTarget. It was a real key ingredient to our success. And Lessonly built such a special culture that everyone in the city wanted to work for Lessonly, and their customers felt a part of the culture. And I think that's a great sign of a winning culture, is when you can attract extraordinary talent, but your customers are so bought into what you're doing and the mission that they feel a part of the team. They feel a part of the culture, and Lessonly definitely accomplished that.
Yeah. Well, why did they sell? I mean, that must have been a really tough decision.
I know it's a good question. I think, I think it was kind of one of those situations where the company had reached a size and scale kind of beyond the founder's dreams. And it was an opportunity to take their technology to a much bigger audience. And Max and Connor were excited to do that. And our role as a studio partner, kind of a co-founder, if you will, and also a venture investor, is to support the entrepreneur. And when the entrepreneur feels the time is right, you've really got to trust their instincts.
Yeah. And they stayed with the company too, I've noticed.
Oh, they did. Yeah, they did. No, exactly. So they're, Seismic and kind of helping to grow the next generation and the next chapter. Yeah. I'm always partial personally to wanting to take companies as far as you can, and that's I think what's important to create more breakouts in a city like Indianapolis, to spur more investment and more entrepreneurial activity. And Lessonly is going to have an incredible legacy. The team that they built are just remarkably talented individuals who they themselves are going to go on to start companies and join earlier stage companies over time. So Lessonly will have a big impact on our city, no question.
Well, I noted that Max and his co-founder and maybe one other co-founder came through the government program, state government program, to encourage entrepreneurship in the state. I thought that was fairly remarkable, and it's something I don't see that much in California, but I see happening a lot more in the Midwest of government support.
Oh, you're so right. This program is called the Orr Fellowship. It was named after a former governor, Bob Orr, and the organization's a nonprofit, and they canvass the campus of universities throughout the state of Indiana: Notre Dame, Indiana University, Purdue, Butler, Ball State, Rose-Hulman, and many, many others. We have an incredible density of extraordinary universities and so much young talent coming out of those schools. And the Orr Fellowship creates a 2-year experience for these new graduates, pairs them with entrepreneurial firms looking for that kind of young talent. And it's an amazing way to kind of pair the best and brightest out of our state universities, out of universities throughout the state, with early stage startups and create a really rich entrepreneurial experience. And more times than not, those new graduates end up loving the fellowship. They feel very connected to the city. They go through this experience with 75 to 100 colleagues, which is a wonderful transition from college life to working life.
Sure.
And then they end up staying in our community and go on to, really give back in many, many ways. So that's one example, I think, of many where talent has been a really important focus area for us as a state.
Right. So what about this issue of not enough scale up capital?
Yeah.
How can that be
We're
solved?
working on it. It's like my, our mission at High Alpha is to create more companies. I kind of describe it in the middle. So we have many sub 100 employee startups, like really rich startup community, and lots of new company formations. And then at the top of the pyramid, we have Salesforce and
Right.
Genesis, who bought Interactive Intelligence, and Infosys, and a lot of very large tech employers. We're working hard to build as the middle, the high growth tech company that's between 100 and 1,000 employees. And I think that band is so important. That's where job growth and economic vitality, and those that are maybe with a big tech company and want to do something smaller and more entrepreneurial are willing to take the risk versus maybe going all the way down to a 5-person startup. So the fruits of our labor at High Alpha and all the investments we're making in the tech community, my belief is we'll fill in the middle and have many more shining examples.
Right.
I think one market that's done an incredible job of this is Salt Lake City. I was fortunate to be on a board of a tech company called Pluralsight that we took public, and then they sold to Vista last year. But Pluralsight and many others, dozens of examples in the Salt Lake area, are in that 100 to 1,000 employee range, growing, booming, having access to Silicon Valley capital and doing remarkably well. So Salt Lake is a market I kind of aspire to be able to emulate.
Oh, okay, that's interesting, because when you were talking about this effect, I was thinking about what they call the PayPal mafia.
Yeah,
all
right.
the entrepreneurs that spun out of PayPal and then created other entities, either a venture capital unit or another startup. People like Peter Thiel came out of that. So many others. But
Yes.
anyhow, we have so many good.
Not as notable, but we do have our own version of the Exact Target Mafia for sure.
Oh yeah, well yeah,
we fly a
you've got
little
the
more under the
Exact
radar.
Target.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely you do. Okay, let's get to some questions here. I see so many lined up.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, so Hal Kalman from Silicon Valley. Okay. As an entrepreneur, I could not find any VCs to invest in my software company. What name venture capitalists are in Indiana now? Well, Hal, one of them is right here on the screen.
Right.
It's High Alpha. But who else would you name, Scott?
Oh, in Indiana, I'd say High Alpha. Allos Ventures is a great firm.
Yeah.
And then I'd say Hyde Park Venture Partners that are based in Chicago. They tend to have a significant presence in Indiana as well, which is great. And then Elevate Ventures, who I had mentioned. And then I would say a lot of emerging managers. Just even in the last year, we've seen 2 or 3 new funds get created that are in the $20 to $30 million range, but they're going to play a really important role in the ecosystem. And I anticipate they'll grow over time as well.
Right. Yeah, it is growing. And all of these groups are raising new funds too. It's not just a one-time effort. It's a continual effort.
No, they really are. Rebecca, one other item I would add is I was fortunate to be asked to be on the National Venture Capital Association board, the NVCA board.
Oh, good.
And we actually have a board meeting coming up on Thursday in DC. The neat part about the NVCA is they really represent the venture industry and looking very holistically at issues that are coming down the path that could impact venture and entrepreneurs positively or adversely. And they drive a lot of education and have a lot of great programming around how to bring new individuals into venture capital. So very supportive of the programs NVCA is running. And I'm really proud to be the only venture studio on the board, and also one of just a few Midwestern firms also. So kind of carrying the flag for Midwest tech and Midwest VCs across that NVCA board. It's been a good experience.
Very good. There's a question here. It's a fairly lengthy question, but I think the main part of the question is at the end. As we start to look for seed funding, should we expect compromise, or would the right VC embrace our goals and culture?
That's a great question. I think well, the funding environment is very tough right now. It's very difficult. So you have to work probably harder than ever, I think, to find the right investor for your stage and the type of business you want to build. But I would really encourage entrepreneurs to make sure the cultural match is really, really strong with both the individual partner who's going to be leading the investment and the firm, because these relationships are likely to be, decade-long relationships if things go well.
Sure.
So you're entering into a long-term relationship, and I would rather compromise on valuation and terms than compromise on cultural fit or chemistry, because if you don't have that with your investors,
Right.
it's going to make things that much more difficult.
Sure, absolutely. Another attendee asked, when would you take on funding for growth?
It's a great question. I would take on funding for growth when, well, in some cases you have to bring on funding, just even to get started. So there's, it's difficult to bootstrap a business today. I think maybe even the way we were able to do it at Exact Target, quite a long time ago. So you probably have formation and early capital requirements just to kind of build the tech platform and get the company started. But when to take on technology for growth, or I'm sorry, capital for growth, I would say is when you feel like you have a repeatable model and you have a pretty clear idea on how you'd invest the dollars, both on the engineering side to drive more product and more innovation, but probably even more importantly on the go-to-market side. So hopefully you've run, enough experiments and feel like you've got a repeatable go-to-market motion around how to drive demand, how to win clients, how to keep them happy, renew them, hopefully grow them at renewal. And I think once you have enough evidence of success of how that cycle's working and a clear idea of where you want to go, then growth capital is fantastic because it can really help you box out competitors, go faster, and get your unit economics, really working in your favor.
Okay, there's a question here about whether an entrepreneur should consider a venture studio or an accelerator, considering that they already have some technology, they started working with beta customers, they're pre-launch, they have some revenue. What should they do? Consider a venture studio or an accelerator?
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. When we started, Rebecca, studios really were not well known, and we often were classified as an accelerator, and they're really quite different. So I think of an accelerator, and actually we have one in Indianapolis that I played a small role in bringing to Indy that I'm really proud of, and it's a sports tech accelerator with Techstars. So Techstars launched their first sports tech accelerator in Indy, which was great because we were able to marry the cloud and SaaS expertise we had with the deep sports history we have here in Indianapolis, because we have the Colts, we have the Pacers, we have the NCAA headquartered here, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and a great history of hosting big collegiate sporting events. So that was it. But like the way Techstar Sports works is they will have a call out for entries. They'll get 200, 300 founding teams applying to be a part of the program, and they ultimately narrow it down to 10 to 12 and run really a 3 to 4 month sprint where it's a very intense stretch of time where there's a lot of mentorship, a lot of working on early customer development, and then it culminates in a demo day to really help the company get funded. I think that works well for early stage companies that have an idea what benefit they want to drive from the accelerator. Could be access to investors, could be early customer development, could be more subject matter expertise kind of within their domain. And it's a great launching pad. Okay. Studio, I think, is quite a bit different. We think of the studio as more of a well-resourced co-founder. It's early, it's bringing a co-founder on board where you can get a lot of those embedded resources in place that are going to help you go fast, but they're also going to be with you forever. So that's kind of our mindset with High Alpha is, early on, we're very, very hands-on. Over time, we take on more of a board or advisory role, but we never take off the co-founder hat. So we're going to support that company in year 6 and year 8 and year 10 and kind of, over the whole full lifespan of the company, where the accelerator, I would say, is more of a launching pad, kind of a one point in time burst to get started quickly.
Okay.
Both have their pros and cons, no question about it. The studios take a bigger equity share because of the shared services and the formation capital. Accelerators tend to take less equity, but really only kind of help you on that front end. There's an alumni network and support over time, but most of the support you're going to get is in that really tight, concentrated window.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the investment stake that you normally take.
Yeah.
So in each of those cases, what would be about the average?
Well, accelerators, I would say on average are probably in the 5 to 6% range.
Mhm.
Studios could range anywhere from probably 25 to 50% going to the studio. And
I
it really
see.
just depends on, the value of the resources being applied and also how much formation capital goes in.
Okay. So here's a question about you starting out in your career after you got your MBA. And the question is, which people and resources did you lean on to make the right decision that as exact target grew?
Such a great question.
It's a good
I,
question.
I, I was so fortunate to have the experience I had from first time founder, first time CEO, really no technical skills. I really came more from general management, go to market, all the way to running a public company and beyond. It's way beyond my wildest dreams. How did that happen? So many talented people around me. I had just tremendous mentors and coaches who helped me grow as a professional, grow as a CEO, learn how to build and scale software companies. And I would also say I very much had a beginner's mind. I had very much of a learning mindset because I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was in uncharted territory. So I had no preconceived notions that I really had a lot of relevant experience or had everything figured out. So I went into every interaction focused on what can I learn?
Yeah.
That's even my preference.
Well,
Meeting with an advisor, a coach, a customer, even a competitor, I
yeah.
prefer to ask most of the questions. And the more listening I can do, the more learning I can do. So that was enormous. I had an early angel investor named Bob Compton, who was really the first person that believed in us. And Bob put a stamp of credibility on Exact Target that attracted lots of other investors. Then he became our chairman and really became my mentor kind of during the early years.
Hmm.
And then in our Series A investor insight, I really looked for an investor that could accelerate my learning and the learning of our team. And Insight fortunately had dozens of other portfolio companies going through the same, highs and lows, the learning curve that we were going through, and they invested heavily in programming. So I'll give you one example here, Rebecca. They had programming for CEOs, which was great. I went to every CEO learning opportunity I could, but they also had learning programs for head of sales and head of engineering and product and customer success. And I went to every one of those. I just thought, why not? I'm going to soak it up. And I probably
Wow.
one of my leaders with me so we could learn together and have a shared vocabulary. And one of the compliments they gave me that I cherished most was that I attended more of their programs than any other entrepreneur they'd worked with. So it's just recognition that I just had a lot to learn. And I've tried to keep that, keep that rolling throughout my career. I like to put myself down on the bottom of a learning curve as much as possible.
Oh, good for you.
Oh, and one other thing too, I'll say, Rebecca, which is interesting, is it's natural when asked that question to think about your advisors, your mentors, your investors. But I would say I also learned a ton from the leaders that I was able to hire into Exact Target. So I was able to hire leaders that had quite a bit more experience than I did, and certainly a lot more in their given domain. And I was really proud of that. It gets back to the point of like, how many future CEOs did we have in place at Exact Target? And we had many, and I really ran the executive team that way, saying we're a group of CEOs, and I tried to learn as much as I could from those executives I was able to hire. And they pushed me, they stretched me, they made me uncomfortable. They had more domain experience than I did, and we found a way to build a really great collaborative relationship.
Well, what would you say your strong suit is in management?
It's a good question. I think my strong suit is team building, collaboration, getting everyone engaged. I would say being a good listener. I really don't feel like I'm the one that needs to have all the ideas. I just feel like I need to ask the right questions and be a good listener to pull the best ideas out of those I'm working with. And then once I hear a good idea, really trying to drive consensus and alignment around a certain direction that we might be going. So I really gravitated, and I still do at High Alpha, toward team building, hiring, culture, getting an organization aligned around big goals.
Right. So how is remote working changing all that?
Oh, it's changing it dramatically. It's interesting.
Do you have to have a physical entrepreneurial hub, or can you do it remotely? What you're describing.
I mean, we have the physical entrepreneurial hub, through the BottleWorks facility, and I'm still a big fan of in-person collaboration. So at High Alpha, our 50 team members, they can choose whether they work from home or what days they work in the office. We have a few departments that'll try to get everyone together on a Tuesday or Thursday. So we have
Yeah.
critical mass and, enough face-to-face time to solve problems and build relationships. I think that's imperative. I really do. I think the in-person collaboration is important. I think it's important for early stage companies also that are going fast, trying to figure a lot of things out, solving problems, listening to customers, figuring out what needs to be built into the product. So we have a whole variety. We have some companies that are largely in person. We have more that are hybrid, where some in person, some out. And then we have others that are fully distributed. So it's really up to the entrepreneur and kind of the company they want to build. My own preference is in-person collaboration in a really flexible work environment where team members can work from home when they want to, when they need to, but there's enough in-person collaboration that you're building those bonds that are really important.
Okay. There's a question from an entrepreneur here who says he's not into tech, but he's in a very fast growth business. And he wants to know, how can he raise capital? He's finding it tough to raise capital to launch his business. Any advice for him?
Oh gosh, it's probably hard to know without exactly knowing the type of business. But I think whether it's technology or a different industry, you have to be able to articulate how investors are going to be able to make money and how the company's going to be able to scale. And is there an exit path? And the exit path could be an IPO or it could be a strategic acquisition. So I think you have to be able to articulate use of proceeds, how the company scales with more money, and then what's the outcome look like. And, tech is a wonderful place to be because there's so many potential acquirers. Gross margin of software companies is very high. So these are companies that are inherently built for scale. So it's important to look for some of those components.
Okay. So there's a question from Tech Point in Indianapolis. I'm sure you know them well.
Phenomenal group. Yes.
Yes. They have launched a couple of initiatives to address talent issues and tax credits. And how important are these efforts, do you think?
Really important. And, just a
Mission 41K and another one, the VCI tax credit marketplace.
Thank you, TechPoint. Thank you,
efforts?
TechPoint, for the question. So, TechPoint is a nonprofit organization here in Indianapolis focused on accelerating our tech ecosystem, and they do an extraordinary job. In fact, I don't know of another state that has an organization so dialed in and so well resourced as TechPoint. So they're a absolute cornerstone of our tech community. And per the question, they're both, lobbying state government or working with state government to look at creative ways to bring more capital into these startups. One is called the VCI credit, and it's actually a state tax credit for individuals who invest in a qualified early stage technology company. And it's actually a 20 to 25% credit that comes right back to the investor. And they just created a new program where it's now transferable. So if you're a San Francisco investor investing in an early stage Indiana company, you're eligible for the credit. So that's fantastic. On the talent side, I think more creativity, the better on the talent side. And the program that was referenced is all about skills-based hiring rather than kind of resume-based hiring. And that's a really important initiative, in particular, as we work to bring more diversity into tech. Women, people of color, those from diverse backgrounds, we need to create career pathways to get these talented individuals into technology and software companies. One of the kind of legacies of ExactTarget I'm most proud of is a nonprofit called Next Tech. And Rebecca, this was the former ExactTarget Foundation that we spun out under the brand Next Tech. We're the code.org partner through the state of Indiana. And we work with teachers in schools, help them have the curriculum and the confidence to teach computer science at every K through 12 school throughout the state of Indiana. And when we started 7 years ago, only 15% of high schools taught computer science. 15, 85% didn't. Today, we're at 100% of K through 12 schools teaching computer science, in part due to legislation that came out from the governor, but a lot of training and enablement, a lot of buy-in across the state to make sure that we're building the digital technology curriculum and enabling these students to enjoy what we enjoy, which is, an abundance of career opportunities within tech.
Okay. So there's a question here about how you leverage the orange culture as a competitive advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. You can see a little bit of orange in my background, actually, Rebecca. So everything in my house, this is like the one wall I have to hang
Yeah.
some of my my former ExactTarget gear, which is fun. So I'm proud of that. And you can see a little bit of orange, but I've referenced a couple of times. We had very strong culture and employees that were so committed and passionate about serving our customers and felt like they were a part of the mission and part of something, you know, much bigger than any one of us individually. And over time, we felt like we really needed a vocabulary to describe our culture. We needed a culture framework. And our chief marketing officer, Tim Kopp, came to me with this idea around essentially branding our culture orange. And at first, I wasn't so sure. It felt like it might feel a little top down or maybe a little forced on our team, but we kind of ran with it and created a very
Yeah.
flexible culture framework called Orange or Be Orange. And it just took on a unbelievable life of its own where, you know, color is a powerful identifier, you know, and it's very emotive and really creates connection. And orange really stood for energy, for being positive, for working hard and innovating.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, programs were being created with the orange theme. So our onboarding program got branded officially orange, and our leadership development program became Leading Orange. And then we started doing acquisitions and opening offices around the world, and ExactTarget orange gear started showing up everywhere, all around the world. And our employees would wear it with such pride. And it was like the common thread that tied us all together, because we had different subcultures. You know, when you acquire a company, they have a different culture. You open an office in London or in Tokyo or in we acquired a company in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Those are all subcultures that you want to honor and cherish the local culture, but you want to blend it in with the overall company culture and create, you know, alignment and, you know, a united front around what we're trying to build. So orange became the powerful connector that really tied us all together. And even today, so many years after the company not existing, I think many of us would say our culture still lives on. And you know, orange is kind of our secret code. It's kind of the connector that ties us all together.
I see. So do you think that Indianapolis will be a new Silicon Valley in the Heartland?
I think we have a long way to go. I think we're going to have to do it in our own way. But my hope is that tech continues to be a powerhouse for opportunity and a real catalyst for economic development for our state.
Sure. So when you say in your own way, what do you mean?
I think it's hard to replicate Silicon Valley. I'm not even sure I would want to. So I think it's, and I would give this advice to any entrepreneur and anyone who really cares about the community you live in and thinking about how to lift up the tech ecosystem, is I think you have to be really thoughtful about what are the strengths you have in the region, and then how do you amplify them and how do you really take advantage of them? And I think of our strengths as incredible universities, a lot of talent, a lot of young talent in particular, great alignment between business and government, very affordable place to live and to work, and just great people, smart people that are innovative, but also are very humble. And for us, it's about how do we take all those assets and turn them into something greater and turn them into something that kind of grows exponentially. But that's going to be different. You know, it's really different than Silicon Valley or Austin or Salt Lake City or Boston. You know, those markets have different strengths to be leveraged.
Right. So how does the team stay ahead of what's happening? This tech is all these new innovations with the metaverse and robotics and AI. And how does your team stay ahead of all of this trending?
A lot of learning. You know, it's listening to a lot of podcasts, reading articles, reading books, stitching trends together and kind of forming your own opinion.
Do you have to go to Silicon Valley or New York?
I mean, Silicon Valley is so important. It is important to have relationships, and I think be traveling all over the country, you know, frankly. But you know, one of our big accomplishments during our ExactTarget run was getting nonstop flights between Indy and San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds, it was a barrier. So we worked to knock down every barrier and every friction point we can to fuel partnerships and investment. And then frankly, just kind of learning back and forth. Okay. My co-founder, Chris Baggett, who I referenced earlier, who started ExactTarget with me, he went on to start Compendium. Then he went on to start an amazing food tech company called Cluster Truck. And he's one of the best examples of anyone I know that is a voracious learner, reading meeting people, having courage to ask tough questions, having that
Right.
beginner's mind that we referenced, and then he
Sure.
forms his own point of view on what the future is going to hold. And
Yeah.
he's like an example of an entrepreneur that I feel like can see around corners. And it's mostly just more conversations, the better,
Yeah.
and then bringing your own unique perspective
Yeah.
to problem solving.
Yeah. I just came across his name yesterday on the cluster
Oh,
truck.
incredible.
And I thought this has to be the same Chris Baggett.
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
and sure enough, it is. And that's a really interesting idea of the ghost kitchens, right?
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, big trend. So you're not related to the other Dorsey in California, are you?
I'm not, I'm not.
Okay, all right. So what about Web3 and the metaverse? Are you doing anything in those areas?
We are. We actually have two companies that are marketing automation for the Web3 world. So we're, really examining what worked in the marketing automation companies we built previously, ExactTarget and many others. And then how do you apply it to the new world of Web3, where the unique identifier is no longer an email address. It's probably a wallet ID. And the products that are being purchased might be NFTs or DAOs or, who knows, other forms of investment. And how do we help those communities grow as a community, and how we help marketers reach new customers? So we're having a lot of fun exploring new concepts in that area. In fact, one thing I'll mention too is we actually hired a phenomenal guy named Keith Laska out of New York, and he's our Web3 and blockchain expert. And he searches for new opportunities for us to explore both at the studio and the fund side. And then he just ran a 30-hour program for our team, and we called it High Alpha University, but it was a crash course in crypto and blockchain that probably 75% of our employees went through on a voluntary basis, just getting everybody's acumen around Web3 up to the highest level, because it's changing so quick and there's so much to learn.
I see. Interesting. And this person is in New York?
He is, yeah.
Okay. And what's their name again?
Keith Laska.
All right, because I think there's some people on the Zoom who are interested in that.
He's
All
a
right.
great resource, talented guy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Now, Salesforce is having its huge conference right now in San Francisco. Are any of your portfolio companies there now?
Definitely, definitely. Many of our portfolio companies are there, and we're actually at SaaStr the week before. So it's been a busy stretch of big events in San Francisco. But yeah, Dreamforce is something really, really pretty remarkable. So I'm excited to tune in for all the big announcements this week.
Sure. What did you make of the Intel announcement in Ohio?
Oh, in Columbus?
The Intel announcement in Ohio, the semiconductor plant in Ohio.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I think it's just a great example of more innovation and more large tech companies seeing opportunities to build a workforce in the Midwest, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's 30 miles from my hometown.
Oh, is it really? How about that? That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's former agricultural land. It's being transitioned at the moment.
Repurposed. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, look, I think this has been really informative.
Incredible questions. I want to thank everybody for their time and attention and excellent Q&A.
Yeah, it was. It was. Thank you. I had to even put on my glasses to read some of the questions. They were so in depth. Okay. Well, so anyhow, just a second here. I dropped my mouse. So I want to say that we really thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Please, everyone, if you like the show, join us for our next series of shows on the Heartland. There's 4 more coming up over the next few weeks. We have Columbus, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati coming up, and more to come after that. So this is our Silicon Heartland series, and Scott was our first, and we appreciate his time and all of his great information. So also, if you like our programs, please join the Silicon Dragon Circle. You can do that by looking at our website, silicondragonventures.com. And hey, you might also look at Amazon and take a glance at my new book, Silicon Heartland. It's on pre-order right now, launching pretty soon. So thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate everyone's time and attention and all the great questions and Scott's wisdom. So we will see you again.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.